Police officers of Reddit, what is the dumbest reason you have been called to scene? Reporting party said a pigeon was acting strangely on her deck. It wouldn't fly away. It flew away when I clapped my hands. Also had a call for 2 people riding bikes smiling suspiciously. Lady called because a cat was in her yard. Not attacking anybody or anything like that. It was just in her yard. Even better is that we had to do a report every time we responded to a call, even if no citations were issued. So in my report, I put a cat as the suspect and a calico as its race. I belong to an online neighborhood board. Some woman went off because people walk their dogs and the dogs poop on her lawn. We all agreed that not cleaning up after your dog is terrible. She clarified and said that everyone was picking up the poop but it was leaving germs on her lawn, so she called the police. Responded to the outside of the county jail one time, LA, County Twin Towers, and had to actually fight a guy trying to climb the fence into the jail. This may not sound like much until you realize we had to fight a guy in order to prevent him from entering the jail, then drive around the back and put him in jail. LA is freaking weird. We get these a couple times a week. My child won't brush teeth, go to school, clean room, do homework, get out of bed. Yup, living the dream. I was dispatched to a house reference a reported vandalism to a vehicle. When I got there, the guy who called was standing by his car. I saw that there was no visible damage to the vehicle. His complaint was that dust picked by the wind was coming from his neighbor's yard and landing on his car. The guy actually wanted to file a criminal complaint. My first thought was maybe I was dreaming this nonsense. All I could do in response was stare at him and I said absolutely nothing. The guy became uncomfortable and explained his complaint again. I couldn't help but just stare at him. At the time, I didn't think I could say anything to him that didn't sound insulting. I think he finally got it since he just went inside his house and never called us again. I would pay good money for a body cam recording of that. I'm not a cop, but a few years ago when I was moving into a house I was doing most of my moving late at night. The nosy old couple across the street kept calling the cops and reporting suspicious activity. The first time the cops showed up they were prepared for a criminal, hands-on guns, flashlights in my eyes. But by the 4th time they just said with me and finally told the couple to stop calling the police. I'm not sure what made the couple think burglars would bring stuff into the house instead of taking it out. What made the couple think? Stop right there, chief. You've already gone too far. Once responded to a call originating in the sheriff's department parking lot. Literally walked out of the doors into the following for stir clerk. A woman who had just gotten released from jail's ex-girlfriend came to pick her up, drunk, on a moped. The reason it got reported is that the drunk woman was doing donuts in our parking lot waiting for her ex, lost control, and rammed a police car. My training sergeant always had a saying that ran true that day: we don't catch the smart ones. This may be the single most amusing thing I have ever read. Officer here been working 2 years in a large city. The first call that truly made me question my job choice was a disturbance between a husband and wife. Officers had been out in the house earlier in the day and the wife called 911 a second time. The wife called and said she and her husband were arguing because she wanted to have sex but he refused because her vagina stunk. It is difficult to remain professional. Not a cop, but an EMT. I was called to a sick person, which turned out to be a perfectly fine person that just wanted a medical checkup, and thinking EMTs were doctors we would just give him one for free. Cop here. We have a guy in town who is paraplegic and confined to a wheelchair. He also has a totally abrasive personality and is an all-around awful person. The county pays for a caretaker, but he either fires them or they quit because they won't cater to his unreasonable demands. He called 911 once because his trash cans didn't get moved to the curb before trash day and he wanted the police to come do it for him. The dispatcher routed me the call. I called into dispatch and told them that I was absolutely not going out to put this guy's trash cans out. They ended up sending the fire department out after enough cops mutinied and refused to go. My neighbor hated my Mustang. He started calling the cops on me for drag racing. No, I'm accelerating to the speed limit of 45 from a stop sign. Anyway, he started calling the cops on me when it was a pickup truck, the UPS truck, the garbage man, etc. If he heard a V8, It had to be me. I spend a couple weeks in Germany. One night my parents get a knock on the door. It's the police. They had reports of me drag racing again. My parents handed the officers my keys and said he's been out of the country for 2 weeks. You can go feel the engine if you want. The police apologized for disrupting my parents' evening. At the apartment tower I worked security for, some Saudi royal family members called the cops because the they hired took the money and ran. Cops said, sure you can have the money back, but you have to admit to misdemeanor solicitation to do so. Before people ask, their cars had KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, license plates and the Saudi royal family crest on it. Also, they admitted to what they did to the cops, so in order for the cops to take the theft report, they would have to include the solicitation report. Cops gave them a break by letting them all go. Those cops didn't voluntarily give them a break. You don't mess with people that rich if you care about your career and life. Saudi Arabian royalty don't forget, and they sure as heck don't forgive. Soon to be police officer here. When I was doing an internship with the local sheriff's office, I was with one deputy and we got called out on a domestic disturbance. Before we could get there, a city police officer intercepted the call and took it, since it was just outside city limits and we were still 15 minutes away. So we continued to patrol the county when the same people called again, specifically asking for a deputy to come out to the scene. We get there and right off the bat this woman is going on about how when the city police officer he was very rude to her and she wanted us to go arrest him and have him fired for unpolicemanlike conduct. I'm not joking. I had to turn away to keep from laughing in this woman's face. She was very angry because he allegedly said the word frick in front of her daughter. Keep in mind this woman was using the word frick 3 or 4 times in each sentence. We pretty much told her that our department doesn't police other departments and that she should contact the chief of police and make a formal complaint. This did not sit well with her and she told us we needed to leave before she called the cops. Again, not joking. At this point the guy I was with couldn't take it anymore and told the woman that he was arresting himself and taking himself downtown and we left trying not to bust out laughing. If everything goes right I will have some more stories once I get hired by the sheriff's office. TL. DR. Lady called cops on cops, threatened to call cops on those cops. Yo dog. My grandma was recovering from surgery in the hospital once. She had to share the room with this senile woman. I was really young but this woman was so memorable. Whenever she needed something, hungry, bed raised, whatever, she would dial out to 911, like multiple times in an hour. Because you call 911 for help. I guess eventually dispatch called the hospital and told the nurses station what was happening and they had to go in there and talk to her about it. Hilarious yo. So minute, a woman found a half-eaten sandwich in her unfenced backyard. She thinks someone threw it there to poison her dog. She saved the sandwich and wanted us to test it for poison. A man called because his trampoline was blowing away in a windstorm. One woman called because someone stole her American flag from her front yard. One of those little tiny yard flags that are about 1 foot tall and plant in your grass. She called the morning after a particularly bad and windy thunderstorm. I had to explain to her that it's much more likely that the flag blew away than someone maliciously stole a 50-cent flag. I then found in a nearby sewer drain. My dog is acting strange. Can you send a police officer? Happens more than you think. My favorite is people who call in because people are driving too fast through the neighborhoods. So we go out there and run radar. 9 times out of 10, the person caught speeding is the person who called in the complaint to begin with. I have a family friend that works for 911 dispatch and her favorite call was when a guy called in because he got his balls caught in his jeans zipper. He thought he was going to die and kept crying on the line. I feel his pain. It's happened to me before. Not a good feeling. A friend of mine who is a police dispatcher said a woman called the police because her teenager took the rest of the Doritos from the cupboard and wouldn't put them back. You can't prove that. So this semester in class a student had lost the lock for his bike, so he brought it into the classroom and set it against the back wall. This was against the rules because in a 200-person lecture hall 100 bikes would crowd the room. However, this was a spacious classroom with 20 students. The professor said that he did not mind the bike being there. Well, the professor next door did mind. He saw this guy bringing his bike inside and told him it was against the rules. The student said okay and walked past. Next week professor sees a bike again and says if you bring that bike in here again I'm calling the police. The student laughs it off and walks past. Next week during class there was a knock on the classroom door. 4 police officers had shown up. One had her hand covering her face in embarrassment and said we received a call that said there was a bike in here which is against the rules making this trespassing. The bike needs to leave or else we have to arrest you. The student said he doesn't have a lock and it will get stolen. Professor knocks some sense into this kid and tells him to go home, then it's not worth getting arrested over one lecture. In the end no arrests were made. I don't think there was a fine either. Police officers all had a look saying why are we here and looked embarrassed. The professor who called the police probably got the bad end of that deal though. The professor whose class was interrupted has a lot of clout at the university and didn't take kindly to the whole situation. There was a lady that called the cops on a homeless shelter because they wouldn't let her turn the dorm into a sauna. Said she was freezing, but refused blankets, wanted to use a fire hazard space heater. Cops came, saw the dorm was over 65°F, and told her that it wasn't an emergency and left. To be fair, I'm freaking freezing if it's 65 in my house. Had an elderly frequent caller report trespassing. I show up and don't see anyone around but her. She said mosquitoes were landing on the neighbor's dog droppings. She distressingly explained how the mosquitoes would then fly over the fence onto her property. I heard a 911 call where an old woman called the police because she couldn't open a jar. The woman actually sent the police to help. I went to a house for suspicious footprints in the snow. The footprints led to the oil tank, so I checked the mailbox with the homeowners and found an oil delivery receipt. Oh, the reverse oil bandit strikes again. This may be apropos of nothing, but I called the police once because there was a guy wandering the mall parking lot across the street from my house screaming frick as loudly as possible and seemed to be trying to force his way into the mall. I didn't call 911, just police HQ because it wasn't an emergency. 9 cruisers showed up within 5 minutes. Must have been a slow night. Possible mentally unstable people in public can go bad quickly. I once called the police because there were hundreds of thousands of maggots covering a huge parking lot and I was convinced there was a body in the nearby dumpster causing the infestation. I might have been drinking a bunch. I'm an EMT and was listening to the police channel on the radio one night. We hear, county to district X cars. We just had a female caller state that there is a black male, wearing a hoodie, walking down her street. Unit on the road. Okay, what does she want us to do? Dispatch, no idea. My partner and I laughed for a good half hour over that one. And that lady later turned out to be George Zimmerman. My neighbors have reported the following. Lawn clippings on their sidewalk. Apparently my dad, who was in the hospital, blew the clippings onto their walk. Not having a fence around an above ground pool and worried their 18-year-old kid is going to drown. Yard has a fence around it, but pool itself doesn't have any barriers. It complies with local bylaws. Our dog barking overnight. We don't have a freaking dog, but they do. Our car being parked in our driveway and they didn't have enough room to erect a non-compliant fence. The fence partially falling over because it was installed incorrectly. Having a fire in legal fire pit. Worried it's going to burn their house down, which is 40+ feet away. Having our camper parked in the driveway and not being able to see out their window. The only thing they can see out that window is the outside wall of our house, and a tree. I have dumb freaking neighbors. This isn't even everything, just what I can remember off the top of my head. Sounds like you need to buy an Annoyatron. Purchase device. Hide in neighbor's car house. Hopefully they'll lose their last grip on sanity within the week. The Dark Lord will hear their anguished cries and come forth from the abyss to claim their souls. Profit. I had a friend whose mom worked for the city. She would get complaints all the time for the dumbest things in the rich neighborhoods. She got a call for there being too much salt on the road in the winter time, and a signed petition from everyone in the neighborhood to get rid of a nearby car mechanic because they thought his shop was too trashy even though he'd be in business there for 20 years before the development was built. A woman called 911 at 5 AM to report her son would not get up to wash the dishes. She went to jail. TL. DR. Our landlord called the police over $2 and a few cigarettes. Backstory: we live in a 3-family home, and our landlord had agreed to rent the upstairs apartment to a couple moving from out of state without meeting them. After getting a good reference about them from the man who was hiring one of them to work for him, they were white trash, loud at all hours, severely underweight and filthy dog, smoked in the house. They were told not to do this, and even jimmied the washing machine open to steal quarters. The landlord didn't collect these. The washing machine was just on our neighbor's grid, and they were used to reimburse them for the utilities that were used. We shared a common entryway with these garbage people, and my boyfriend left his jacket out there. In the morning, the last few cigarettes from his pack and $2 were missing. He called the landlord to let him know. At this point, our landlord was desperate to get them out and was trying to build a case, and our landlord called the police. An officer had to come over and take a report. We felt kind of silly. Landlord was probably looking for any excuse he could to evict these people. Stealing from neighbors makes it no longer a landlord-resident issue but an issue that concerns other residents as well. This happened on a particular cold evening. A lady put her pit bull out on their porch and left the dog there overnight, and the poor thing froze to death. The owner called 911, and when we show up the dog is frozen and we have to charge her with animal cruelty. Felt bad for the dog, not the person who was still drunk when they called. I'm not a police officer, but I liked a Facebook page where all calls to police for incidences are posted for the county. The center of my hometown is the crossroads of 2 major state highways, and they've slowly been expanding them. Traffic is super congested in town, and I repeatedly see posts like this. Officers called to intersection of 34 and 47 because light is taking too long to change. Or officers called to intersection of 34 and 47 because lights have changed, but cars remain stopped. Really, people? This construction has been going. Officers called to intersection of 34 and 47 because lights have changed, but cars remain stopped. Well, I mean, it's not safe for the cars to go while they're on their phones calling 911 to report the traffic issues. Cop here. Dumbest reason for being called to a scene. Lady called and wanted us to tell her son to go to school. One of our stations had a carnival fundraiser and the street was closed. Someone called and complained there was a Ferris wheel obstructing traffic. Someone called in for theft from the city. The suspect was stealing recyclables from the trash can. Gas-powered leaf blower use is illegal. This is possibly the lowest priority on my list of things I don't care about. I'm sure there are more, but these are what came to mind. Worked for the local newspaper and we got to read all the calls to the cops. The most hilarious one was from a woman who called in to report a man driving around in his van playing loud music and luring kids. When the cops showed up, it was Ice Cream Man. I wish I was making this up. Some people are just nosy busybodies. My sister called the cops on me when we were kids because I was mean to her. I was babysitting her and she wouldn't leave my room, literally like protesting, and wouldn't get off my bed. So I gave her a dead leg and she stormed off crying. Like 10 minutes later she comes in running begging for my forgiveness. Cops rang the doorbell a couple minutes later. The cops, my mother, and I were not amused. I'm a commercial vehicle officer. A lot of my time is spent working way stations in my area. One day I heard a bolo, be on the lookout for, locate for a stolen tractor trailer combination coming from a neighboring city over my radio. The guy stole it from a company yard, pushing another vehicle out of the way with his newly acquired Kenworth in the process of fleeing. He drove to another city to pick up a prostitute tweaker and headed back into my town. Driving a truck he knew was reported stolen. He pulled into my open way station to get weighed, carrying stolen freight that came with the stolen truck. The guy went easy. His friend locked herself in the truck until local police arrived to take the arrest. I went to court over it, and the reaction from the grand jurors when I explained the situation to them was pretty good. I don't think I've ever seen an open way station before. My dumbest call was a backup request from our fire department. 50 400 pounds guy had been calling the fire department a few times a day to let his dog out or bring him something like milk or the TV remote. They explained that they were regularly taking care of his dog by letting it out and picking up its poop. The fire department finally got pee and started calling us to help. The guy used to be normal and then he got fat and started needing medicine so he wouldn't hurt. The medicine made him completely idle so he got really fat and completely spaced out. I was going to arrest him for 911 abuse after I found out that they had 60 calls since the beginning of that year. Didn't have a big enough car so I took a warrant and let someone else figure it out. Now I understand why the police in my country has a big rig. Oh. Retired Leo here. About once a month we had an old lady call us out to search her attic or backyard because she could smell people having sex there. It became so routine that the SOP was to spend a few minutes shining the flashlight around her looking concerned. Also had another one who believed her washer and dryer were demon possessed. She really did believe this. She could hear them talk crap about her. She'd call every few months. SOP was to look behind, inside, and around the dryer looking concerned and trying to reason with the ghost. I finally got fed up with it and yelled at the ghost to get the frick out of here and never come back. Seems to have worked. Had to help the fire department unsuction an obese lady out of a bathtub. She was literally suctioned in there. FTO asked me if I had ever seen a colored TV. I said yeah, of course. I thought he said color TV. So, we go to a call at the local Stab and Jab motel and a complainant, who was a 6'5" 130 pounds black man answered. He was in a blonde wig, full drag and wearing lipstick and red pumps. He complained that the men in his room, about 5 of them, promised him crack if he let them frick him. He was mad because he never got his crack. I crap you not. True story. Disturbance call with an irate husband. Arrived to see him rapidly walking down the street approaching the SCAD car with wife running behind him. In a populated neighborhood. With a big long floppy dildo waving around screaming, "Is this who you cheated on me with? UW. A Mexican midget. Male. Sorry, little person. Wanted to file rape charges against a man for raping him in the workplace. Domino's Pizza. Security footage showed that it was consensual. Not dumb, but really weird. And hilarious. Guy called to report suspicious activity and possible burglary next door. When I arrived he had a joint behind his ear. Normally I wouldn't care too much, but you gotta at least try, man. I mean, come on. Lady lies and calls to say her husband beat the crap out of her again. Here's where the dumb sad part is. Now I'd arrested him before for DV a couple of times and he swore up and down he never touched her, but was in the bar down the street. Earlier that day I pee off my supervisor and was put on foot patrol in the neighborhood. Walking down the street on the sidewalk I saw this lady beating herself in the face with a chair. Literally. I call my supervisor and he gets there and we are both on the street watching this lady go WWE on herself with this chair. We then left and checked the bar and sure enough hubby was in there drinking and minding his business. She calls 15 minutes later saying hubby beat her up again. I arrested her for filing a false report. BTW. Poor guy was telling the truth the whole time. Got so many tales like this it isn't even funny. Yes, the list goes on. But I think you get the point and it answers Up's question. I think. Love, peace, and chicken grease y'all. There are quite a few, but here's a recent one from last block. Get called to a neighbor dispute over barking dogs. Speak to the complainant who says his neighbor lets her dogs out a few times a day to do their business and they yap for a few minutes before being let back in. He says he has reported it to animal services and by law but they are taking too long. He feels this is harassment because he has a 5-month-old baby who sleeps during the day. I tell him that based on this info it doesn't seem unreasonable but I will talk to his neighbor. Talk to her and she loses it saying that he has been harassing her for months. He has taken out a portion of the fence to enable her dogs to escape. He walks back and forth along the fence line every time she and her disabled 18-year-old daughter are outside creeping them out. He has been recording them by cell phone every time she lets out her dogs. And finally he yells and bangs in his walls every time she has company over. On top of that I meet the dogs and they are quite well behaved. Also she has months of records with dates and times of his weird behavior. Basically, I end up going back to the first guy and cautioning him that he could face charges of criminal harassment if the behavior continues or escalates. I'll probably be back again next week. Paramedic here, and I know these stories are a dime a dozen. They wonder why we burn out. Some favorites. Minus 50-year-old woman to clean up after she defecated on the floor. Call came in as abdominal pain. 2 AM of a 20-hour shift. 30-something-year-old who called in the middle of one of the state's worst blizzards in recent memory for cracked hands aka dry skin. The 58,239,829,239,235 drunk homeless calls I respond to a day because they are drunk and denied shelter. It will come in as chest pain. The man paraplegic with leg pain whose motorized wheelchair had died and thus prevented him from getting to the shelter before it was full, would not leave his wheelchair that I can neither lift nor transport. Had to hand push it a mile down the road to the shelter. The man who had been somehow practicing karate at a closed gym, torn his labia and was waiting my arrival with 5 bags which I was instructed not to forget. Edit. This dude was also wearing a cheetah bathrobe, pinstripe pajama pants, and had hair like Doc Brown from Back to the Future. To the man who was allergic to water and stuck in the rain. The woman who was having trouble seeing because her light bulb blew out. The teenager who made me walk 8 miles off the trails and down a cliff with all my gear, 3 engines, and the state PD because she didn't feel like walking out. Call came in as female feeling weak to literally transport a dog and its unhurt owner to the hospital because it was close to where they lived. Their vehicle was disabled post MVA. Insert every my neck my back my lawyer call. Insert every if I go in by ambulance it will be faster than waiting at the ED call. Breaking news. I bring you to the waiting room. These are all I can remember right now, but you get the point. Needless to say, I went back to school. The guy tore his labia. I didn't know I had one of those. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.